Hi everyone. So thank you for attending today's webinar on Go Faster with Maya 2020. So as we get started, please do type in the chat if you are unable to view our screen or have any trouble with your audio. So again, very good afternoon everyone, and my name is Nigel from Autodesk. So hope that everyone is well during these times, and we'd like to thank you for taking the time to come out to attend this webinar. Technically, you're not out, you're just in the comfort of your home as well. So in today's webinar, Go Faster with Maya 2020, we have our speaker, Siddharth, who will take you through on how Maya 2020 has been empowering artists throughout the entire production pipeline. He will also introduce on the tools that can help animators, modelers, riggers, and technical artists work faster and more intuitively. So before we begin, I would like to just have a couple of housekeeping matters. Today's webinar will be recorded and we will provide the recording after the session. And for the webinar, we also like to keep it as interactive as possible. So do feel free to keep typing your questions in the Q&A panel on the screen, and we'll get to them during the Q&A session that follows. So with that being said, I would like to pass the floor over to Siddharth, our Senior Technical Specialist for Autodesk Media Entertainment, to bring you through today's session. Sid, please.
Thanks, Nigel. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Siddharth, and I'm a Senior Technical Specialist with Autodesk Media and Entertainment. I'm based out of Singapore, but I'm regularly go around the ASEAN region meeting with customers. But for now, I'm doing this webinar from my home in Singapore. I hope everyone's safe, everyone's doing well, and everyone's animating using Maya. So let's jump in because we've got a lot of cool stuff to show you today. Most of the content is going to revolve around Maya 2020, but I also have some sneak peeks with regards to some of the future tech that we're working on here at Autodesk for Maya and the other applications that help you create faster and smarter. Now, when we talk about Maya 2020, we kind of based our development of the workflows in Maya 2020 around four main pillars. The first was faster animation. So we've got a lot of cool stuff for animators in Maya 2020. Things that will improve your productivity greatly when you've kind of migrated or jumped onto the latest versions of Maya. We've also made quite a number of improvements to the Bifrost toolset, which bring new ways to create your visual effects shots, and also giving you access to a very flexible system of creating your content within Maya. Arnold has had a major release as well with the release of Maya 2020. We're out with Arnold 6, which brings the GPU rendering out of the public beta that we were in for a while, and now makes it production ready and ready for you to use. So I'll be telling you a little bit about that. And also throughout Maya 2020, you'll see a lot of workflows that pretty much improve productivity in terms of time spent in doing repetitive tasks within Maya time after time in your normal workflows. So kicking things off, I just like to let you guys know that we're listening to your ideas about Maya and about our other applications like 3D Studio Max. So if you Google Maya ideas, this will bring you to a site called the Maya Ideas Forum, where we invite Maya users from all over the world. So users like you that have logged into the webinar this afternoon to get on and submit their ideas for making Maya a better tool for content creation. Now, this can be anything ranging from bug fixes that you wish to see in Maya to even new features that you would like to see added inside of Maya. With the release of Maya 2020, we've looked at about 650 votes spread across 30 different ideas. Now, the great thing about the Maya Ideas Forum is that people can not only put up their request for a new workflow or a new feature within Maya, we also have a voting system where other users can vote on how important they feel a particular feature or workflow is to their production pipeline. So getting feedback directly from the users allows us to give you a much better experience while we're developing for the future updates inside of Maya's. The top 3 voted ideas from the Maya Ideas Forum made it into the 2020 release, and 12 of the top 15 voted ideas actually made it into the Maya 2020 release. So that gives you a good idea that the Maya development team is actively listening for feedback from the users and implementing their feedback, when we take into account the development of the upcoming versions of Maya. So I'd just like to say thanks to everyone who's been on the Maya Ideas Forum. Your feedback is helping us make Maya a better tool for all of you to use. Now, like Nigel mentioned earlier, we want to keep this webinar interactive. So we've got a couple of poll questions just to get a sense of what the 3D artists out there are using as of today. So if most of you are Maya artists on this call, we'd just like to know, what version of Maya do you use in production currently? Is it version 2019 or 2020? Is it versions 2016 to 2018? Or are you using a version that is older than Maya 2015, or are not using Maya currently, or some other package? So those are your 4 options. The polls should be visible for you. We'll leave the poll open for about 5 to 10 seconds so that everyone can get their answers in, and then I'll go through the results of the poll. So I'm just opening it up for voting from the guys on this call. Okay, so I can see we've got quite a few responses coming in at the moment. We'll just leave it open for about a few seconds more. Okay, Nigel, we can stop the poll. So we've got responses that most of you are actually on Maya 2016 to 18 currently. There's a good sizable bunch of you, close to 20%, that is on the latest versions of Maya, which is 2019, 2020. There's a lot of you that are not using Maya at the moment. So whatever 3D package you're using, I hope today's session will give you a good overview of how powerful Maya is when it comes to the content creation process, and how we're making life easier for the content creators out there. So moving along, one of the things that we've kind of strived to improve in Maya over the last few versions is the viewport capabilities in Maya. So essentially with 2020, we've added a lot more muscle to the Maya viewport that allows you to preview PBR-based assets in real time. And we've also added support for image-based lighting and area light reflections. So all of the stuff that you see in the video that's playing on the screen is all happening within the Maya viewport. These are not renders. These are all in viewport displays that we are seeing in the video that's up on screen. So you can see the Maya viewport is highly capable of giving you really nice quality displays, which means that from a look dev standpoint, the Maya viewport is a very powerful tool to have. It allows the artist to do look dev at an incredible pace and speed, and sort of gives you close to real-time feedback when it comes to getting an idea of the effect of the light in your scene, the shaders and the materials that you've applied onto your objects. Even if you wish to kind of use the Maya Sculpt tool to make adjustments to the model and see how that works in the entirety of the image-based lighting setups that you have, all that is now possible within the Maya viewport. Again, working with HDRI lights in the Maya viewport gives you instant feedback in the viewport and gives you just a great display for your finished assets. So you can save your time in doing renders to see what your final asset looks like and get them showing up in the viewport instantly using the capabilities of Maya Viewport 2.0. Another thing that artists grapple in the day-to-day workflow is how long it takes them to load and save files inside of Maya. So since 2016, 2017, we made a conscious effort to improve the system that deals with the file loading and saving times inside of Maya. So with Maya 2020, or with the release of 2019 and 2020, you can see vast improvements when it comes to file save and load times with Maya. So we can now say that we've got a 90% speed improvement for metadata, 25% improvements for large scenes. And if you just take a look at this video, this is showing a massive environment that's been loaded in Maya 2019 versus 2018. So you can see we've got the environment loaded in 2 minutes 9 seconds in 2019, whereas it used to take 18 minutes in Maya 2018. So that's a massive bump in terms of time, especially having the ability to load large scenes and large environments quickly inside of Maya is imperative to keep the artist productive. Now, we've done this in a variety of different ways, from being able to offload Alembic caches on the GPU to enable background loading of textures and materials. Those all contribute to the improvement in the file loading and saving times with the current versions of Maya. And this is something that we'd like to keep working on. So during our development process for improving the performance of Maya, we received a scene from one of the top game development game asset companies, based in the US. And that their original scene, which they were working on Maya 2017, used to take 1 hour and 18 minutes to just open up, right? So in terms of heavy scene load times, Maya 2017, the scene took 1 hour 18 minutes. Now, with the improvements we made in Maya 2018, we were able to bring the load time for that particular scene. So this is a AAA game, possibly a PS4, Xbox game scene that we're trying to load with massive amounts of texture data, massive amount of polygon counts. In Maya 2018, we were able to bring down the load time to about 20 minutes. And furthermore, with the improvements in Maya 2019, we were further able to reduce the scene load times to 6 minutes. Now, where we want to go in the future is to improve the load time to something like 3 seconds. And one of the key pillars for us to be able to improve the scene referencing and the file handling capabilities of Maya is our investment in the USD workflow within Maya. So USD is something that's a major focus within the Maya development team now. A lot of you might recognize this data set. This data set comes from Pixar. It's it's a bunch of assets from the Finding Nemo movie, and this entire scene is about 9 GB in terms of size. Now, using Maya's USD implementation, we were able to load this scene, all 9 gigs of it, natively inside of Maya, and enable viewport viewport properties to have it rendered out with Arnold. So this is a big step in making studios more productive, more efficient when dealing with large data sets inside of Maya. Again, as you can see, the animation caches are running absolutely fine. And later on in the course of this presentation, I'll also show you how we've got this hooked up to Arnold to ensure that USD data can be kind of piped through and rendered out using the Arnold implementation inside of Maya. Another key ability for artists to be able to work faster is just small things like being able to select dense geometry based objects, or to work with large number of small mesh faster. Again, thanks to the new improvements that we made to stuff like the isolate select, you can now work up to 50% faster when it comes to day-to-day tasks like selection and deselection of component objects, or when it comes to stuff like snapping, you'll also find there's been a massive improvement in terms of performance with just simple stuff like snapping tool sets within the viewport in Maya 2019 and 2020. But by far, one of the biggest investments we made into Maya 2020 is the character animation and effects workflows. And one of the first things kind of where we kicked this off was in Maya 2019 with the introduction of cached playback. Now, I know quite a few of you out there on this call, on this webinar, have probably done a play blast at some point of time. Either you're an animator that does a play blast on a day-to-day basis, or has done a play blast at some point of the production process. So we'd like to hear from you as an animator in Maya. How much time do you spend doing play blast on an average? We've opened up a poll, so please go in and key in your answers. We'll leave the poll open for a few seconds so that everyone can get their answers in. Okay, so we've got we're getting the responses in. We've got about 13, 18%, 20%. So it's pretty well distributed right now. 40, I think majority of you say 1 hour a day. You know, the second biggest vote has gone to 2 hours, and then 3 hours, I'm guessing, are the hardcore animators that are logged on to this call. So we can just leave it open for a few seconds more. Okay, let's wrap it up, Nigel. Okay, so so from the poll, we've kind of got an idea. 41% of you spend about 2 hours a day doing a play blast inside of Maya. 33% spend 1 hour, and 26% spend 3 hours. Now, when you think about a play blast in Maya, it's essentially time wasted, right? You've done your animation, you set your keys, you've made adjustments to the graph, and when you're doing a play blast, it's essentially time that you're spending doing nothing much. You just have to wait till the play blast is done, then take a look at what it looks like, and then go back and make changes to your scene. So that's a typical scenario for an animator inside of Maya, to be able to see his scenes running in real time. So what we embarked on was a development process where we could say, what if an animator did not have to hit the play blast button inside of Maya? That would mean an animator would save roughly 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours of time that he's spending play blasting on a per day basis. So we came out with the cache playback system. And when the cache playback system first came out, we had animators going on Twitter, going on Facebook, and sort of really showing their excitement for this new system that we put in place in terms of the animation inside of Maya. So the cache playback system initially was a very simple and easy to set up system. It just required a click of a button. But it gave you great productivity increases. So this is Maya 2018, and we're running the scene at 8 FPS. The same scene in Maya 2019 with the cache playback runs perfectly well at real time at 24 FPS. So as an animator, this is immense, right? You don't have to play blast the scene anymore. You're getting a close to real-time representation or playback of the scene in your viewport itself, which means you don't have to go ahead and play blast your scene anymore. Again, the system is quite easy to use. You can see the cache playback button down there on the next to the timeline inside of Maya. It's also an intelligent caching system. What that means is when you make changes to the animation or changes to the scene, what Maya does is that rather than recaching the entire animation, it only needs to recache the particular portion where you've made edit to the keys. So essentially, you're not waiting for the animation to be recached every time you go and make a change to that particular animation. Thanks to the smart caching system using that's been developed as part of the cache playback mechanism. Maya is smart enough to understand what part of the timeline the changes have been made and only recache that particular portion of the animation. Now this means animators can spend less of their time in doing a play blast when working inside of Maya, and spend more time in being productive with their animation workflows in Maya. So 2019 saw the release of the cache playback. While it was fantastic and it was production ready, it still had some sort of limitations. We did not have support for image planes within the cache playback mechanism, and we did not have support for dynamics within the cache playback mechanism. With the release of Maya 2020, we've added support for the end dynamics and some of the Bifrost dynamics using the cache playback system. We've added support for the image planes caching, and we've also added support for smooth mesh previews, which means that the cache playback mechanism inside of Maya now is a complete solution for animators that are working inside of Maya. Pretty much everything that an animator would do inside of Maya is now supported by the cache playback mechanism, so they can get insanely good playback speeds directly inside the Maya viewport. Again, coupled with the capabilities of high quality displays that the Viewport 2.0 is capable of doing now with Maya 2020, it really makes for um, a a kind of complete and tightly knit system for animators getting their work done inside of Maya. So this video that's coming on screen in a couple of seconds will just give you an idea of some of the improvements that we've made to the cache playback system. So like I mentioned before, we have now added support for image planes, which means if you have an image plane that's loaded up inside the cache playback system in Maya, that can now be displayed and can now run at very smooth frame rates within the Maya viewport. Um, Moving along, I said before, dynamics is now supported with the cache playback system. So you can see going from 2 frames per second to 15 frames a second with anti-aliasing, ambient occlusion, textures, lights, and shadows all turned on is a big jump in terms of the frame rate in the Maya viewports. What we've also done is we've added a nice little ghosting system within the Maya viewport toolsets, which means this is an additional kind of toolset for animators to be able to better visualize their animation inside of the Maya viewport. So the ghosting tools that we've made kind of additions to within Maya 2020 really gives sort of a solid helper tool set for animators inside of the Maya animation workflows. Again, ghosting along with motion trails gives you a lot of possibilities in ways to kind of visualize the animation that's going on in your scenes, and also edit the animation that's going on in your scenes. With dynamics, we've added support for end particles, end bodies, end cloth, and also Bifrost and Mesh nodes. Image planes as well. With 2019, there was a sort of a workaround that you have to use to have image planes supported by the cache playback mechanism. That we've now taken that out in Maya 2020. Another cool little tool that we've added inside of Maya 2020 is the animation bookmark system. Now, I happened to be animating a scene a couple of days back, and I thought let's use this up to kind of break down my animation. um, this is this is essentially a great tool to have for any animator when they want to visualize the different parts of one single animation. So we can mark, navigate, and organize specific events in the time slider using the animation bookmark system. Now over here, what we've got is this sort of robotic spider that we've animated for this futuristic vehicle looking thing. And Traditionally, if we wanted to kind of scale the timeline to see one particular move of our animation, we would go into the time slider and scale that down. Now in Maya 2020 with the animation bookmark system, all you have to do is select the frame that you want to start your animation, drag out a timeline, and create an animation bookmark. So you'll see there's a new button to enable creation of a bookmark. I can give that bookmark a name, so I can name it according to the animation action that we've just animated. So we can say left foot plant, and I'm going in and setting a color for that bookmark so it's easily identifiable. Now, if I go in and frame that bookmark, the timeline automatically will get clipped to that particular section of the bookmark. So before I do that, I'm going to create a second bookmark. So we've got the left foot plant, and now I'm creating the right foot plant. Again, we'll assign a specific color for the left foot and the right foot so that it's easier for me to see in on screen. Now I can quickly go and frame that bookmark up. So I can right click, go ahead and frame the bookmark, and Maya will now clip the timeline to that specific bookmark. So it allows me to isolate and see a particular motion in action within the while still keeping the entire timeline intact. I can jump between different bookmarks. I also have something called a bookmark editor. So I have a bookmark manager where I can go in and assign the bookmark specific colors. I can, you know, edit the in and out frames of the bookmarks. I can kind of lock the bookmark up if I don't want to edit it. So it just gives sort of a nice little helper tool for animators that are working inside of Maya 2020. So animating with audio is also a kind of common task for all of the animators out there. And let's be honest, Maya never really did a good job of the way you worked with audio files inside of Maya. So what we've done in Maya 2020 is we've taken that feedback from the animators and we've given you a bunch of new audio features. So now with Maya 2020, when you're loading up an audio file to allow you to kind of go in and edit the animation out, um, you can now load in an audio file in. Sorry, that's not the right slide. Where's the audio gone? Right, so we can now load the audio up. We've got a volume control button, so we can adjust the audio directly uh, from the timeline itself. We can switch to waveform display, and we're now able to see the sound nodes in the outliner itself. So I can go ahead and see the sound nodes inside the outliner. That makes it really easy for me to edit the audio in there. So I've just kind of located my audio slide, so we can just take a look at that. Now, here we've got a typical scenario of animating a lip sync animation with some audio. So, now in 2020, when I go in and drop the audio in my timeline, I can go in and adjust the volume on my audio directly from Maya's UI without having to jump into the window audio control. I can import audio by right clicking and importing the audio directly inside the timeline itself. I have support for different kinds of waveform displays, so I can switch from an up to down, a top, bottom, or centered display of the waveform. So this just makes animators' life a lot easier when they're working with audio inside of Maya. Previously, it used to be a lot of hoops that the animator had to jump through to get his audio working, but with the release of Maya 2020, we've kind of made that workflow a lot more seamless with Maya 2020. We've also done a bunch of updates on the tangent on the graph editor. So we've added options to the modernized graph editor, as well as giving you the option to have color themes now in the Maya graph editor as well. With the release of 2020 Update 2, which was during the virtual GDC session that just happened a month back, we also announced the addition of the Rococo Motion library inside of Maya. How this works is a very straightforward scenario. So if I just go back a few slides, now if you've updated your Maya to update 2020.2, you'll now see a new slider. So I'm just going to set up a character. I'm just going to use one of the default characters, use the auto rigging system to quickly set up rig on this guy. And we now want to work with some motion capture data to quickly prototype some animation on this guy. If you go into the animation editors in Maya 2020 update 2, you'll now see the motion library option that's become available to you. This will load up the Rococo motion library from within the Maya UI. Now, the Rococo motion library is fantastic because it allows you to browse through different sorts of animations, motion capture animations. So you can purchase them off the Rococo motion library. And we've also tied up with a particular animation provider to make a whole bunch of motion absolutely available for absolutely free to all of the Maya users out there. So if you go into in the publisher section, you will see the publisher called Superalloy Interactive. That's whom we've tied up with, and they've made a whole bunch of professional mocap options that have made it available for all the Maya users out there. So as you can see, these mocap files are all priced at $0, which means it's absolutely free. The workflow to get this in from the motion library inside of Maya is to just go ahead. You can preview the animation within the motion library tool set. So you can go ahead and preview that. And once you're ready to buy, you can just add to cart and go in and check out the animation out. What happens then is that the animation gets placed into your motion library team library. So these are the animations that I've purchased previously. All of these are free, absolutely free for you to go ahead and use. You can just download the animation from the link and import that inside of Maya. So as you can see, we've got the animation now imported inside of Maya. I can play this back. Again, I'm using cached playback. So as you can see, I'm getting 120 frames per second in terms of playback in the viewport on this animation. All the animation files that have been provided by Rococo have all been characterized with the human IK system. So HIK is already set up. So if you want to kind of go ahead and use this animation and throw it and retarget the animation onto your characters, it's just as easy as going and switching the character source and getting the animation working on your characters. Again, thanks to cache playback, we're now able to view this animation data at almost a more than 100 frames per second running on my laptop. So that is really a solid workflow to animate for animators to have when they're working with Maya 2020. So in terms of the guys out there who are riggers inside of Maya, we've kind of started the process of overhauling a lot of the rigging tool sets that existed in Maya for a long time. So we've added a new rivet command which allows you to create locators onto a deforming mesh. So it makes it really easy for your characters to kind of to add accessories to your character, or to do simple attachment of objects to your characters that are animated. Again, we've reduced the node and connection clutter. Now, as most of you know, Maya works on a node-based workflow, and typically the more number of nodes that you have in your graphs inside of Maya, the more kind of complex it is for your system to calculate that particular scene or playback that particular scene. So we're looking to kind of reduce the number of your nodes that a rigging artist would have to use inside of Maya, to make sure that we're improving performance for those rigs that you've set up inside of Maya, thereby improving performance for the animators that are using those rigs with the simplified node display. One of the examples is the offset parent matrix node. So for instance, to do a simple offset parent matrix, this was what a Maya outliner looked like previous to 2020. Now with the offset parent matrix, we can decompile, or we can compress all of those parent-child relationships into one single node in the Maya node editor. So as we can see, we've got kind of the setup that used to look something like that. Even if you had stuff like fingers, there were a lot of nodes that were at work. So this was what your graph used to look like pre-Maya 2020, right? And post the offset parent matrix node that we've added, this now simplifies it to a graph that looks like that. So again, bear in mind, having to use less nodes when you're rigging or setting up your characters means that your scenes and your rigs will play back much faster when you're using Maya 2020 and beyond. So modeling something that we've also made a few additions in Maya 2020. We've added a very cool remesh and re-topologized workflow that gives you a lot of possibilities. So let's quickly take a look at what that is all about. Now, in terms of re-topology, we've added remesh and re-topologize. The re-topology workflow, the remesh workflow redefines mesh topology and uniformly tessellates triangles. So when you've got objects that you might have created using a Boolean function, and you want to kind of randomly, you want to evenly distribute the polygon count or the polygon flow on that mesh, you can quickly use the remesh function to go ahead and create uniformly tessellated triangles across the surface of the mesh. Now, in conjunction to that, Re-Topologize will take that mesh and generate a clean quad mesh using that particular workflow. So using the same kind of Boolean mesh that we started off with, we can now generate really nice looking topologies on our meshes. So when we look at hard surface examples, typical Boolean operations gives us not so great geometry like you see on the image on the top. Now, if you see the image on the bottom, just by using the click of a button, we're able to really generate some nice topology on our objects inside of Maya 2020. These are some more examples showing, complex Boolean operations. Um, Post that, we're able to nicely manipulate the polygons into a nice quadrangular flow across our polygon objects. This also opens up the door for a lot of different kinds of workflows for modelers out there. Now, character workflows with the remesh and re-topologized functions inside of Maya 2020 means that it gives you a new way of working when it comes to modeling and sculpting your characters. So you could start with a rough shape with simple primitives, which you could then boolean into a simple mesh, right? We can remesh to create a uniform triangulated mesh, and we can use the sculpting tools to sculpt out the base mesh. And then we can quickly run a retopper to get a smooth quadrangular edge flow amongst the entire asset that we're creating. So again, using these kind of workflows, even for something like a photogrammetry workflow, this brings in new ways of working with our geometry. So as you can see in this example, we've started off with photographs of a giraffe model. We've gone ahead and cleaned this up. We've got a heavily triangulated mesh, and using the re-topologize function, we've generated clean quads very easily inside of Maya. So if you're using the Autodesk Media and Entertainment Collection, we can use Recap to photograph this up. We can upload it to the cloud. We can then go in and generate a recap mesh, which can be cleaned up, which can be optimized and bought inside of Maya. But as you know, meshes that are generated using photogrammetry, tend to be heavily triangulated and not, ready to be rigged up or animated. Now, using the remesh and the re-topologize functions, we can quickly go in and clean up this mesh. So we've gone ahead and first remesh this edge up to create evenly distributed triangles, and then using the re-topologize function, we can create a smooth polygon flow across that mesh. Now, what is really cool about this whole process, that it also maintains your UVs and your texture maps that you might have added prior to the remesh or re-topologize area. Again, with the quad draw functionality, this really brings new ways of working for modelers that are using Maya 2020 and beyond. Now, just kind of moving on, Bifrost was a platform that we announced last year. It's an independent kind of plugin that works inside of Maya and eventually will work inside of 3D Studio Max as well. in the 2020 release, we've done a number of updates to the Bifrost release, and we've enhanced its capabilities greatly with the latest Bifrost update that we've done. Now, essentially, for those of you that are new to Bifrost, Bifrost is essentially a node-based system which allows you to build effects and assets inside of Maya in a procedural manner. So, for instance, what you're seeing on the left of your screen is a rocket trail node graph. That enables you to build a volume effect like you see on the right side. Again, these graphs that you build inside of Bifrost can be easily converted and condensed into a compound that can be shared with other artists across your studio. So once an artist would create a Bifrost effect, it makes it really easy for the studio to share that effect across multiple shots and across multiple artists. So it really makes it easy, and it really makes it procedural in terms of the way effects are generated within Maya. Again, these compounds that are generated can also be further condensed into a JSON file and easily shared with anyone across the world that's using Maya. So Bifrost essentially is visual programming combined with a set of really powerful solvers that enable you to do effects in ways that was not possible earlier inside of Maya. Apart from effects, we're also looking at Bifrost to be able to produce powerful, scalable procedural geometry, and in effect, look at building world building scenarios within Maya. All of this works really well with Arnold. So as you're building your effect, as you're building your graph, you can see the updates happening within an Arnold render view to see what the effect looks like in real time without having to wait for a simulation to happen, or for a simulation to be complete before you can go out and render that out. We have the ability to plug in Arnold shaders directly inside of your graph, which makes it a very procedural and intuitive way of working inside of Maya. For those of you that are new to Bifrost, we've also got a Bifrost browser, which is filled with presets. So we've got a whole bunch of really cool presets that you can instantly drag and drop into your Maya viewports and start to either use these in your effects shots or effects assets that you're creating, or take them and modify them into something that's even cooler than the preset effect. The solvers that Bifrost comes with or ships with is fairly powerful. These are a couple of examples of the aero solver that's used for combustion effects within Bifrost. These are all user generated or user created examples. This is something that one of our users has put up very recently on YouTube. It's a combination of N particles as well as Bifrost existing together. So we've done some N particles and then added the aero combustion system to generate those really cool rocket trails. Again, some combustion shots that scale really well at high resolutions. Making it one of the really kind of accurate solvers that is out there in the industry today. So these are some more examples of smoke that is mixing together with each other. Fumes, rocket trails, and so on can be easily created with the aero solver. And again, this is made for scale. So whatever we do, whatever tool sets that we build inside of Maya is meant to scale up to larger scenes or larger shots. So these are some examples that users have put together that really give you a good idea about the scale that Bifrost can handle, Bifrost and Arnold can handle, using the leaning on the power of Maya. Along with the aero solver, we also have an Mpm solver inside of Bifrost. That's being developed by a company called Jixi Effects, which is a bunch of really talented individuals that have created the Mpm plugin for Bifrost. Again, it's very accurate in terms of real world scenarios. These are some recent tests. A lot of you might not have seen these. These are some recent tests in terms of the cloth improvements that we've done with the Mpm solver. Again, these are some again cloth tests that we've done. So you can see we're getting really accurate simulations and accurate results with the Mpm cloth solver in Bifrost. This is a bit of fun that one of our developers was having to test this out. So we threw on a bunch of cloth objects on Swen just to give it to get an idea of how well this reacts with each other, and with rigs as well. Again, scale is really important for us. Most of our customers that are using Maya are doing things at high qualities and higher scale levels, which is very important for us when we're building tools like Bifrost, that they can kind of work with the next generation assets and next generation scene sizes as well. Strand is something that we also have enabled within Bifrost, which gives us the startings of the ability to build a hair and fur system using the Bifrost toolset as well. As I mentioned before, this all works really well with Arnold. So this is a massive number of Arnold stand-ins that have been instanced as rendered archive and rendered out with Bifrost. Now, this is a sneak peek at something that we're working on. We're looking at how we can leverage Bifrost in terms of world building. So we're looking at how we can do mesh and volumetric terrain generation of grass, rocks, and vegetations, procedural buildings, fences. Now, this stuff is a little bit out there in the future. This is something that we're working on, so I can't promise when this might be out, but this is something that we're definitely working on. The scene that you see on screen right now has been completely generated using Bifrost. So it's a procedural system where we've generated the mountain terrain, and then we've used kind of the Bifrost tools to have some scattering of grass across the landscape. We're also doing some clipping based on the distance from the camera. So we've built Bifrost graphs to handle all of these different elements, and they all exist kind of really well within the Bifrost ecosystem. This is another example that one of our users has put up. This is essentially Bifrost, a look at what Bifrost might be for modeling inside of Maya. So this user has sort of generated a volume-based extrude modifier that works inside of Bifrost, which really opens up the possibilities of what modeling inside of Maya in the future might be like. Again, all this asset that you see on screen is running a Bifrost graph in the background. So all of the computations, all of the vertex welding and merging is all being done via a single Bifrost graph. So Bifrost, is really powerful. It's also got capabilities to run distributed simulation scenarios, and with every copy of Maya or 3D Studio Max, you have the ability to run Bifrost command line up to four machines, and if you have a collection, you get up to 15 nodes of being able to run Bifrost on the command line. So just in the interest of time, since we're coming up to the hour, let's finish off this session by getting a look at Arnold 6. So Arnold 6 is a pretty major release, given that it's the first release with the GPU version that's ready for public consumption. We're now able to do rendering on the CPU and the GPU, all utilizing a single Arnold license. So there's no kind of separate licensing schema for the Arnold GPU version. So Arnold has progressed at a rapid pace in the past year or so. So we've had in the past year or so, we've had Arnold 5.3 that added, hair, SSS, atmospheric procedurals. We had Arnold 5.4 a few months later, which added support for open shading language, random walk version to SSS, transmission dispersion. And then we had Arnold 6 that was recently released, which improved the OSL support and obviously got the GPU out to the public. These are some really fantastic Arnold renders that have been done by our in-house artist, Lee Griggs. This is a clay shader created by Lee. These are some tests with the Arnold Clip Geo. That's Clip Geo as well as the Toon shader inside of Arnold. Again, giving you some mad possibilities to do some really neat simulations like you see on screen. Again, toon shader, that's something that's getting very popular out there. People are creating some really crazy tests with the toon shader inside of Arnold. This is a look at the OSL implementation. So Lee actually kind of set up an OSL scratches shader that can be used with Arnold. Now, Open Shading Language has a fantastic implementation in 3D Studio Max, and we're kind of getting the Maya implementation as well, close to that level, so that we can give artists a fantastic experience when working with OSL inside of Arnold or any other third-party renderer that has OSL support. This is volume displacement with Arnold, so allowing you to build some really cool looking effects. We've added the denoiser in 5.3, again giving you ways to quickly denoise your image using the NVIDIA Optics denoiser that ships with Arnold, or using the standalone noise denoiser that allows you to quickly kind of clean up the noise in your images when you're working with Arnold. And the thing to keep in mind is that Arnold works with pretty much all of the DCCs out there. So we have an Arnold implementation for Cinema 4D, for Maya. So if you're getting an Arnold license, an Arnold standalone license, that can work with pretty much any DCC that is supported by Arnold. Now, talking about the GPU, we work exclusively with the NVIDIA GPU at this point of time, with special support for RTX, which means that a normal GPU would work, but RTX just gives you a bit of a speed increase when working with Arnold. We're leveraging our partnership with NVIDIA and utilizing optics in the most efficient way in terms of our GPU implementation. And obviously, if you have the budget to go out and buy an RTX card, that is going to give you a massive speed bump when working with the Arnold GPU. So when we talk about RTX speed up, it's we get up to a 2 times speed up when using when we compare an RTX versus a non-RTX card with the Arnold GPU. So there's definite advantages. And as RTX cards become cheaper, they become more commonplace. We think a lot of our customers are going to leverage on the power of RTX to get fantastic results with the Arnold GPU. So this is a comparison between a CPU and a GPU render. Now, the thing that we're really pushing for is a unified workflow, whether using CPU or GPU. What that means is that all of the Arnold shaders, all of the Arnold lights will both work on the CPU and GPU, whenever you'd like to switch between each other. So it's sort of like a live switching mode where you can just go in and switch between CPU and GPU and everything will just work. Again, these are some cloth renders, volume renders, CPU, GPU. So you can see we're getting a pretty uh, uh, a pretty matched up experience between the CPU and the GPU renders, but obviously with a big bump in speed, right? So here we've got two images. You can see the CPU takes about 6 minutes to render. The GPU is rendered in 2 minutes 5 seconds, and then we can use obviously the denoisers to go in and denoise that. So CPU rendering 1 minute 55 seconds, RTX GPU 4 seconds, with really negligible difference in the image quality. The GPU has been in beta for quite a while before we went out and released the public version. So it's production ready. It's been tested in production and works really well with all other aspects of Maya. So it works in the viewport as well if you wish to use the Maya viewport rendering, or in the Arnold render view. The GPU allows for a smooth workflow when working uh, with Maya 2020 and Arnold. And obviously given the support for the Arnold shaders inside Viewport 2.0, again, it really makes for a unified look dev environment when using Maya and the Arnold GPU. So we've also made significant performance improvements with the GPU. For those of you that have tested it during the beta phase, we've made some significant memory and performance improvements in the GPU release for the public. So again, I'd just like to quickly give you a update on the USD workflow. So USD is something that's a big area of focus for us here at Autodesk. So the Arnold USD is now open sourced. You can go in and get it from the GitHub, the GitHub repository. We have a render delegate, we have procedurals, we have schemas for Arnold inside of Maya, which means that you can now load up your USD scenes and have it rendered out using Arnold inside of Maya. Again, this is Pixar's USD scene that we've loaded up inside of Maya, and we're able to render that out using the Arnold render delegate for the USD workflow. So just to recap, if you're a studio that works on a variety of different projects or employs a variety of different artists, you can get hold of the Autodesk Media and Collection that gives you access to not just Maya and Max, but also gives you access to Recap Pro to add photogrammetry workflows to your pipeline. You have access to SketchUp, you have access to Mudbox and Motion Builder, but more importantly, you also have access to Arnold. Arnold is free as a plugin for Max or Maya, but the Media and Entertainment Collection gives you 5 nodes of Arnold, which makes it the cheapest way to add Maya and Arnold to your studio's production pipeline, and also have the ability to set up an Arnold render farm that you can then use locally within your studio, or if you wish to go on the cloud, you can take those render licenses up to the cloud as well. For those of you that want to learn more about the features and the workflows that you just saw, you can go on to the area website, the Autodesk area website, or the Maya YouTube learning channel. We've got a bunch of content related to Bifrost, Arnold, and Maya. That's all up there. And we regularly keep coming out with new content for you guys to check out. A couple of resources that you should also check out is the Maya YouTube channel. Again, that's got a lot of cool stuff for you to learn and pick up, Bifrost graphs, or even some of the new look dev workflows that are possible with Arnold and Maya 6. With that, we've come to the end of the session. We're right on the dot in terms of time, but let's open up the floor for about the next 5 minutes. If you have any questions, you can type your questions in the question box, and we'll use the next 5 minutes to go ahead and answer your questions out. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can use the question box to go and type it in.
Actually, we had a question said
Okay.
someone, so basically they basically asked like, where can we get Maya, and if there's a subscription for Maya.
Okay, give me a second. Let me just, yeah, so you can obviously just if you haven't got access to Maya, you can get access to Maya from the Autodesk website. We've got a 30-day fully featured trial, post which you can go ahead online to subscribe to Maya, or you can contact the reseller in your area to get a subscription to Autodesk Maya, right? And anything else?
Yeah, so let me just to add the next question. So someone asked, can Bifrost be used to read characters?
Okay, so this is something that is definitely a possibility with Bifrost. Like I said before in the presentation, Bifrost is actually an open platform that allows you to build your own tools for your production pipelines. Now, while the rigging capabilities are not there yet, the full rigging capabilities are not there yet. We have seen artists, we have seen Maya artists that that are sort of building their own rigging tool sets using the Bifrost node mechanisms. That said, with the next few Bifrost updates that should come in the next few months or so, we should have more capabilities for artists to bring their to build their own rigging networks and nodes using the Bifrost toolset.
Okay, so we have time for just one last question.
Okay.
What is the difference between Bifrost and the legacy and particle system?
Okay, so the legacy N particles was, is really old, right? We haven't really developed much on top of that. With Bifrost, what we're looking to give artists is a procedural workflow, which was kind of not possible with the N particle system. Bifrost allows you to be flexible, procedural, and also extend something like a character rig and have it interacting with stuff like dynamics, have it interacting with fluid systems, have it interacting with combustion systems. A good example would be one of the videos that we saw where the avalanche is created. The avalanche is actually created by a character kind of disturbing some of the snow on the on the mountain ranges. So Bifrost, I would say, is a much more sophisticated, much more streamlined system compared to the N particle system of the old times. Um, but we will let the two exist within Maya for a particular period of time, that people are still using the N particle system. Till Bifrost reaches that maturity level, we still see people using the N particle systems for a lot of operations. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, if there's any other questions, just feel free to reach out to us. S- so during one of the polls, we do see that a lot of you are actually new to Maya. We do have a flash promotion going on right now, from the 1st to 10th of June, for those who would like to take take on Maya for the very first time. You can actually take advantage of this promotion. So we are offering a 20% off Maya subscription. And so after this webinar, we have a post-webinar survey that would like to ask everyone to basically take a 1 minute or two to help to fill it up. So I'd like to thank everyone once again for taking the time to come to this session today. And as always, please do reach out to any of our Autodesk partners, ourselves, if you'd like to learn more about these new features shown today. And again, a shout out for the flash promotion that is going on from the 1st to the 10th of June. So as always, please do take care, stay home and stay safe, and I wish all of you good health. Thank you.